Hello and welcome to another video. This is the Warlock build that I decided to make because Warlock is one of the newer classes that you weren't able to try out during the demo. So, as I mentioned or written it down in my Steam guide, we are going with a balanced stats on the Warlock build. The reason for that is a lot of gear that you want to equip. You can be switching them out depending on what you need. So the minimum for each stat would be 50. So 50 intelligence to wear a robe, 15 dexterity to wear something that's giving you a bit more, mobility, stamina regen, etc. And then 50 on, well, let's see if I can find something. Even 60, for example, for this unique. 60 plus, or at least 50 is what I recommend. There's 40, for example, for this glove, dexterity glove, or in this strength glove. So, yes, our main focus would be focusing on the strength for the health that you need for a certain amount that you want to reach. At this point, the gear I want to have is 60 strength, so I would recommend putting at least 60. And then the rest goes on intelligence, and the reason for that is you want to reach to a point where you can spam your skills on cooldown. So summoning your minions will cost you 25. Using the Vortex will cost you 94. Using Chandrils will cost you 51. Using your Dark Ritual 59, and then your Demonic Tail is 29. And as you can see, my MP went down pretty quick. You can reuse the skills now. Minions will die eventually. You resummon them. Lash for the damage. Ritual for the damage. You can see my MP is already below 50 while you're pumping out with your main attack. So intelligence is gonna be a key to getting yourself having a pretty decent rotation. On bosses, you are gonna have some downtime where the boss will phase out and not be able to be attacked, or you need to dodge and properly heal. Then yes, a decent chunk, I would say 100 intelligence is pretty good. As long as your mana regen is, I would say, reach to 10 if you can, if you plan to play out for a longer time. But I went with extra strength for this playthrough. I'm playing on serious difficulty with my friend who plays a ranger, and it synced out really well. It just needs a lot of practice, patience, and getting familiar with the fights. Now, enough of the talking. Skills is what you guys are here for. So the skill build, we want to max out our mobility. It doesn't really travel as far as I wanted it to be, but it does give you an iframe for a short amount of time. The cost goes up for a bit. This is why we go a little bit more on the dexterity. I'd say 50 is pretty good, or decent amount of dexterity. As you can see on my stamina, I can dash. It still recovers decently, but I will eventually run out of the dashes. So if you're traveling for a long time, yes, you are gonna run out of stamina. But for boss fights, you're not dashing that much, but it's still preferable to have it on a low cooldown, so you can dash whenever you need to. The second upgrade, having a passive that will be upgraded by just putting level 1 only. It doesn't heal that much, but having that small healing when you dash, and you might be dashing multiple times, it's a nice boost on healing yourself when your pots are on cooldown. And yes, I still recommend playing the game with only health potions. I'll go further on with that later on, with why you should go with that instead of, let's say, the mixed rejuvenation pot or even a MP pot. So for Warlock, the gimmick, the main core of Warlock is your main hand attack. Now, going back to my Paladin, we don't really use it because we focus more on the burst of the Righteous Hammer. On the Warlock, on the other hand, we use the Soul Dagger quite a lot with this build. Soul Dagger is your main skill. It scales really well with your weapon. The weapon is scaling off with poison, and with poison you have more dot damage. So Soul Dagger, with the obviously increasing the main hand damage of it, will do a lot of damage on impact, but also the dots will take quite a lot if you apply the attack multiple times on an enemy. And then obviously upgrading the second part will make it into an AoE, which is good for early game. And then Barrage of Souls, this will make it more of a burst, but it will cost you a lot of essence. I wouldn't recommend maxing it out immediately, but it's a nice skill when you get to expert, I'd say. Soul Cleave, explosions, more AoE. This makes it so much easier to, AoE grind mobs. So yeah, good skill. It's a bursty skill. Really nice. It gives you that nice feeling of applying dots on the enemies. Now, Soul Essence is something I mentioned on my guides, that you could put stats on the passives and ignore the first skill or the active skill, because you're not going to be using it for this build. But the passives could be something that you can consider, but I never had a chance of having max stacks except for the beginning of the fight. There's no reason to have any points spent on this when you can spend it on something else. Same thing with Abyssal Claw. I tried to play with it. I've seen the master skill of Possession that gives you Abyssal Claw bonus, and I don't like any skills that gives you a temporary thing and then you will have a difficult time yourself by losing health and whatnot. Playing on serious difficulty, this is not something you want to go with. It's already difficult to be close range with the Soul Dagger, being even more closer with Abyssal Claw, and it's costing you mana. I wouldn't go with this. It's really difficult. Now, the Demon's Tail, or I would call it Demonic Lash for some reason. This skill is good once you get to the expert. The stun will help you, even though the cooldown increases. It scales off with strength, hence why I said I spend a little bit more on strength, because I'm playing on serious difficulty. This scales off really well done for my lash. It gives a stun, which is nice for you to, group up enemies, stun them, and then put all your AoEs and whatnot while they're being stunned. It's really nice. Something I would recommend is, I'm unsure about the lightning and the fire, but I would see the fire as the better one if the enemy is stationary. Obviously, it puts a dot on the floor with the flamings. The flames is literally burning them. But the lightning one is some extra damage, which is really nice in general, and it has an AoE opportunity as well because it shoots out or it arcs with the lightning. But in general, I would go with the demonic strength and max it out later on. Like, this would be your last last remaining skills when you max out the other core skills, and then obviously max your Demon's Tail if you feel like to, but it's gonna cost you more mana. And the reason why I would recommend maxing Warlock spells is because of the later skill or passive in the expert. Now on the adept part with the passive, we go with Soul Harvester. This is gonna be your first thing you want to max out. It helps you out with your soul essence. It's really nice to get the soul essences, and obviously you get the what's the word for it? The moment when you get this, you can rely on being a bursty warlock, and you can eventually rack up your soul essences. But it's not as viable as what you get later on. It's still something you have to play around with. It's gonna be helpful. I would say mid game to end game. You will still need to use soul essence from time to time, but keeping it at level 1 is already good enough. But Soul Harvester is something that you would want to focus on, especially on when you're grinding and questing and doing the story. Now for expert, Dark Ritual, 1 point at least at early game, and I would gradually level it up it's a really nice skill to clear out enemies. You can do the line of sight by hiding behind the wall while enemies are funneling in, and then you obviously place it down and then dodge the attacks, and then you unleash a big chunk of damage with the skill. Later on, I figure out it would be good to have the bleeding. During the fights, when you're fighting a boss that will move around a lot, you won't be able to wait for the 3 second. It would be a waste to be spending 3 points into it. So in my opinion, I would go with the bleeding one. At least when you're placing it down, it's gonna take some AoE dot damage on top of the enemy. It's something that, you know, in case you need to run out of your circle, at least it did something, right? The fire one, I did not pick this. I don't think I can rely on fire at the moment. If you have, for example, the Fury Lash on Demon's Tail, and then you have fire stats on your gear, I would then recommend going with the conflagration passive. So that's a way for you to play, obviously. Instead of focusing on poison as much, focus on fire if you can find a weapon with fire, and then Demon's Tail with the Fear Lash and Dark Ritual with the conflagration. That would make you into a fire warlock, but I'm going based off the default stuff, which is poison. So I try to avoid that. Bleed is just an additional dot. It's always good to have dots. It's nice to see the extra numbers ticking on the screen. Shadow Tendrils. We maxed this one out as well. It's based off your poison build as well. Probably did not mention that on my build because I updated it quite a lot. But yes, your main weapon is based off poison. You're gonna have artifact, or I would call it your accessory with the egg that you get from the Spider Queen. You will get the poison stats increased. So Shadow Tendrils scales really well with that damage, and the duration is really nice. I wouldn't see the evasion being helpful, especially with the gear that I have right now that sets my evasion to 0 to make me a bit more tanky. The evasion will just not help you at all. I feel like increasing the cooldown by 6 seconds, it's gonna take a long time, and you do want to sync it with the Dark Ritual because you are gonna dance with the enemies within your circle, and the Shadow Tendrils helps out to deal that extra damage while you're inside the circle and having a lot of enemies around you. So evasion, no thank you. Now, as we said earlier, if you're not focusing on poison, you can change this to a fire one. Another option to go with the fire build as a warlock, but it's gonna require a lot of investment and being lucky with the drops and whatnot. Aura of Atrophy, you are obviously gonna max this one out. Not the drain life, unfortunately. We'll go about that in a bit, but Aura of Atrophy, it's your aura that weakens the enemy. Obviously helps with the party play as well. You take less damage, obviously, and it's always nice. And then later on, when you have infliction with weakness or vulnerability, you can inflict and spread it to other enemies as well. It's just a nice aura. Maxes out, become a party player. If you're playing by yourself, this is also something that you can max out for yourself. Drain life, 1 point only. You only want to unlock the proc, so you can life leech while enemies are weakened, which is what this skill is doing by default. So you will have life leech on 24/7 by 2%. 4% increase is not worth the skill points that you spend on it. 2% is enough. It's the same with the dimensional step where you move and get your health restored. Now for master, the main build and core, Vortex of Souls, syncs really well with the Soul Dagger. Does the same damage with your main hand, so you want to focus on your weapon to be doing, having a high damage on it as well as high poison stats on it. Not only does it do the damage, it also builds your essence with this upgrade. This will build your essence. You will not have an issue with shooting or main basic attacking 24/7. Max this one out. It's really, really awesome. Once you get master, you're never gonna regret it. Always go with this one. Tempest of Souls is a lightning damage one. It will zap to enemies where the tornado is or the cyclone is literally hanging around. It's your AoE. Just to mention that this is an AoE skill that you place, and it's gonna be like a turret spinning. So this will shoot out some lightning, does extra dot damage. So dot on top of dot, while also giving you resources, and then you're gonna be close to the enemies with your Shadow Tendrils. That's even more dots. Put out Dark Ritual, which puts another dot with the bleeding or the flame, depending on what you're going with, and then it's gonna explode and do massive damage with the Dark Ritual. On top of that, you're close to the enemies. You have an aura, so you're really, really fine. You are untouchable. And then you also have the main, your main skill where you spam your left click and then lashing now and then to stun the enemies. So, yes, core skill, stick with it. And I just realized I missed out the Malevel, whatever this word is, the casting, the passive. This one is also something you can use whenever you consume mana. Like I said earlier, when you're spamming a lot of skills, you are consuming a lot of mana. This is why I recommended maxing out the Demon Slash. So it's gonna cost you 50 when you max this one out. It will trigger then the casting passive, and this will do pure damage to nearest enemy based on your current mana, which means we're scaling your mana with intelligence. So getting more intelligence will scale more towards this, and will do damage, pure damage to enemies. So like I said, dexterity for the mobility, so you have enough stamina to dash around and heal yourself. Strength to have enough heal to wear plate armor and to scale with the demonic strength of your lash. And then afterwards you spend your stats on intelligence, so you have enough mana to do a rotation, continuous rotation, or a big burst. And also it scales with this passive. Now 1 point on the mana leech when you spell critical. It's the same with every other procs. You do not want to max them out. It's not worth it. Having the proc by putting 1 point into it is enough. And then the last one, you want to max this one out. You're gonna lose some health, just 10%, but you're also giving a trade-off for 40% more damage on your spells. I would say it's fair and good, considering that 10% of your health lost of each spell, you can just dash around and gain your health back 3%. So that's like 3 dashes, and you'll have your health back for 1 spell. So if you have any issues, you have obviously the biggest pots are 6 per pot, and you can have it's really late now, my math is really bad, but you can have 18 pots to heal yourself up, so that's not an issue. You have life leech as well, so definitely max this one out. Now for the remaining points, I did mention about in my build that transmutation might be something you can look into. It's not my thing, in my opinion. It's something you have to lose your health over time and get hit, and you have to heal yourself just to get some extra stats. I don't think it's that worth it. You can change to the stamina one, where you use up your stamina. I don't know, you can think of, oh, I'm gonna dash a lot, but 100 stamina is a lot, and dashing costs only 18. So you're gonna have to dash roughly 5 to 6 times just to trigger the strength intelligence buff, which is not that great. I tried it out, I had to respec immediately. And it's the same thing with this one. This will increase your stamina and your health whenever you use your spells. Might be something you can think of, but I still feel like it's not worth it to have increased stats of extra HP or extra MP or stamina when you barely use those resources. The only thing I can think of is obviously more mana, so you can have extra, extra spells ready, or have extra health, so you can survive a little bit more longer. But that requires you to actually spend your mana and then heal yourself up before the duration refreshes or ends. So not something I would recommend. Same thing with Demonic Resolve. You never want to be on low health, especially in serious mode. Do not be on low health. Possession, you lose health. And it depends on if you can have it up all the time. There's a cooldown of 30 seconds. It's not worth going the claw build. Unless you're playing on easier difficulty. Go ahead, play and enjoy. But what I recommend on serious difficulty, this build. It has range, it has AoE, has single target damage, but it does require a lot of practice, and obviously it's more fun to play with a group of friends or with strangers. But this is a better build for party play. Now, Dark Pacts. I would recommend this, but I also wouldn't recommend this. It depends on your difficulty and how confident you are. I wasn't confident in obviously surviving. I've been making some videos of my boss fights, and I died quite a few times. So I don't think the 20% damage taken would help me unless it is a one-shot mechanic. Then yes, maybe the 60% of damage increase would be really nice. You also have the trade-off with the health for the mana and stamina. Same thing with the other and resistances. It's just not that great in my opinion, unless you do a specific build. But in general, the first passive maybe, but not something I would recommend. And as for last, if you're trying to fix for a summoner type of build, do not go with the summon fiends. It's a buggy skill. Even if you have health, or even if you have mana, and you're holding down the skill to summon 10 of them, I believe there's max summon you can do is 10. It sometimes summons all 10, it sometimes summons 5, it sometimes summons 2, 1, whatever, 3. It cancels it out a lot when you're moving around and dealing with enemies. This one bugs out so much that it triggers me so hard when I see it on cooldown, and I was supposed to summon 10 fiends. It's really nice on paper when you see you can summon different things that scales out with different stats. But poison build, you might as well go with the summon hatchling. It's doing poison damage, it has physical damage, it has evasion, it's quick to spawn, it summons. Fairly simple. It summons all of them by one button. 8 hatchlings. So having that is really, really nice. You get it from the spider boss. Playing in a party, you will get obviously more of these. I would not recommend having more than 2 maybe. It's you kind of want to spend your spells on your spell cooldown with the stats. That's correct, in my opinion. Spell cooldown or any poison percentage damage or any defensive stats is probably better than having multiple of these, because you don't really need that much of poison damage. It's just nice to have that extra for the extra tick. Now, to showcase, and I'll stop talking eventually because I'm getting sick. I feel like I've been sick since I made this video and earlier. Spider itself does a lot of damage. I know these are low levels now, but they do a lot of damage. And as for the right click, you will unbind a lot of skills. So for my right click, my Demon's Tail does heavy damage because it scales off with strength, and it also stuns the enemies. Really nice. Let's see if I can remove my spiders. They should be gone. Oh, they're fighting each other. Dark Ritual. 900 damage. Even 1000. Tendrils. Just gonna run around. The tendrils are chasing the enemies, dealing 30-ish 10 damage. But it's a lot of tendrils, and it racks up with the damage. And let's go for these enemies. The Vortex, it just demolishes the enemies. So whenever those Vortex are spinning, you want to have a group of enemies inside of this. And then obviously combining everything, it would be looking like this. You start off summoning your spiders, enable your tendrils, throw in your Vortex, put down the ritual, demonic lash so that they're stunned, and then auto attack as the Vortex fills your essences. And that's basically the whole build. It's a bursty build, like the paladin that I have with the righteous hammer. It's slightly more difficult because you have to be close to the enemies and you have to be cautious about your health and your defense. But it's a really nice build. It's a big difference from playing at paladin, for example. Now, I don't have anything else to mention. It's already a long video. I hope you guys had a good insight on how the build works, and I shall leave it here. I'm actually getting sick, so I probably should go and rest up. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys another time.